With that, hello everyone and welcome back to the Canadian Immigrant Virtual Fair. We are proud to have our hiring partner Dialectica as one of our key partners of this year's show. I am Sanjay, the publisher of Canadian Immigrant, and we are thrilled to have all of you here with us today. Hope you've had a chance to visit some of our exhibitors. If not, don't miss out the opportunity. We are open till 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time today. In the interim, let's jump into our next speaker session presented by, once again, our partner Dialectica. This presentation is entitled Strategic Resume Writing and is presented by DIVERSEcity Community Resources Society. We will be joined by Shivani Arora and Don Duthie, employment specialists from DIVERSEcity. In this presentation, we will hear from Shivani and Don as they talk about workshop on strategies to get your resume noticed by employers. Shivani and Don, thank you so much for joining us here today. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. We are glad to be a part of this presentation today. So I'll pull up the presentation, and today it's me and Don. We will be talking about couple strategies. So what we decided, we have divided this presentation in two parts. So first part, I'll be talking, and then I will pass on the virtual mic to Don. So let's get started. So before I begin with the main topic of the presentation, I would like to talk about the organization for which I work. So I work for, So I work for DIVERSEcity Community Resources Society. As you can see that we do provide services for new immigrants, Canadians, refugees, and international students as well. We connect people to various opportunities and other resources. So if you are new to the company, or you are planning, or you have decided Canada would be a place where I want to spend rest of my life. So DIVERSEcity is not-for-profit organization which serves Surrey and Lower Mainland communities, and it's been almost 42 and more years actually. We have couple departments. We do have language department, we do have free youth employment services, we do have other training services that we offer. So whether you are coming here with your family, you are single, or you have your partner along, so DIVERSEcity do have services for everyone. Since Laura mentioned that we do have couple international people joining us today, so I thought that I'll quickly talk about pre-arrival services as well. So DIVERSEcity doesn't provide pre-arrival services, but we do have settlement workers which can connect you to appropriate resources. But when we talk about DIVERSEcity pre-arrival, how we can help you with that. So there are a couple organizations. So I have mentioned link in this presentation, and we'll be happy to mention in the chat box as well. So you would see there are many organizations which would help you to identify that what are the various services before you come to the Canada, how you can prepare yourself better for this community, whether it's your resume, whether it's connecting to colleges, whether it could be any services. So you name it, pre-arrival services do have everything. But then again, there are a couple things that you need to consider. It's very important to recognize that you are eligible for the service. In simple terms, a confirmation of a permanent residence letter or a letter from IRCC, simply saying that you can get pre-arrival services, that would serve the purpose to avail any pre-arrival services. Okay, so now let's jump to the main topic, strategic resume writing. So there are two objectives that we would be talking today. So participant would be able to understand key strategies of resume writing, and they would be able to create strong customized resume. So when I say strong customized resume, we are talking about changing your resume every time you're applying for a job application. So few questions to start. So I thought to make it more of interaction based. You can even put your questions in the chat box as Sanjay mentioned, but we'll make sure to entertain all those questions later. So the very first thing to begin with, what's the purpose of a resume? How long resume should be and how much time employer do spend on initial review of a resume. So maybe Dawn, I'll ask you, since you are active participant today. So what do you think? What's the main purpose and how long a resume has to be and how much time employee do spend on that?
So the main purpose is to supply your contact information, your keywords, qualifications, education, and your volunteer work. And also the main purpose of the resume is to make that phone ring. If the phone is ringing, then your resume is working. If you're not getting any phone calls, then that's when you know you have to change your resume. How long should a resume be? It should only be 1 page. And how long is an employer initial review of a resume? The top section will only be 10 seconds. So that's why we recommend a 1 page. And we'll get into more details as we go along through the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. That was actually a very appropriate answer. So again, when we talk about resume, there is no right and wrong answer. You need to make sure that your resume is presentable and you are giving sufficient time to the person that they can review your resume. So now just imagine if we are sending 2 to 3 pages of resume, how can we expect that person should spend time screening that entire document? It also depends upon the position. Now let's take an example. If you do have maybe 10 to 15 years of experience, it might be difficult for you to put in everything in 1 page document. There are exceptions, but if you are someone who do have 5 to 7 years of experience, or you have been working in the same sector from couple years, then just make sure you do not prepare a very lengthy resume. And as Dawn mentioned, that employer actually do not spend more than 20 seconds, I would say, on a single resume. So I remember last year, me and Dawn, we were in one virtual fair where recruiter actually mentioned, and that was a pain point, that for one position, there are 1,500 applicants sometimes. So just imagine if the position is very popular, everyone would want to apply. Even they do have applicant tracking system, but when they sort your resume at the end, recruiter is the person who need to review it. So in case if you are preparing your resume, which is really lengthy, right, and then you are not giving sufficient time to the person. So if you are sending them a resume which talks sense, which is actually, you know, talking purpose, then obviously it becomes easy. Instead of sending a lengthy, resume to the employer, then chances of getting selected becomes less. Even though if your ATS, system of the company screens your resume and if everything is good to go, but still at the end, that's the human who would look at your resume. So just make sure about those things. Second thing, make sure you start with the golden circle. So when we say golden circle, the rule says that you need to know what's the purpose of your resume, what you want to tell them, what's your story, how you would tell them, and why you want to tell them. So for these things, you need to consider what's my target, what is exact position I want to apply for, how my profile statement would look like. Without dissecting job description, it will become very difficult for you to talk about those things in your resume. So as I mentioned that you need to talk about your story. Now, just imagine that you want to start your resume with the document, and you would like to use, multiple templates you will try to download from a website or something. But then again, remember that, every time you apply for a position, you would think of a different template, which is not a bad idea. We can use a new template every time, but that's not a concern. Content is the king here. So make sure that you match your profile with the job description every time you prepare. You need to focus on skills and traits. Also, you need to make sure that you entice your employer so that they show some interest in reading your resume. Uh, it doesn't matter whether you are making a fancy resume. It has to be a simple formal document. If you are making columns and tables, then obviously it looks casual, and it also doesn't gives you impact that it's coming from a professional or experienced person. So your main concern has to be on putting your language out there instead of a template. Okay, now there are few do's and don'ts that you should take you should have in your mind before you start preparing your resume. I have seen couple resumes in the past, and it also depends, in which country you are applying your resume. Asians, they do have different, rules. Europeans, they do have different rules when it comes to the job application. Sometimes you apply your application online and they do have written there, okay, we need a cover letter, or we need it as a one document, or we need, maybe picture on your resume, which I don't see what's the reason behind it. But then again, if you want to consider general situation, please don't put your pictures. It can also depend, for which sector you are applying. And maybe for hospitality, for some reason, they might ask for your age maybe. But then again, this is not recommended that you should put your picture. Even if it's professional picture, your employer isn't concerned with your looks or your age and even your gender. So this is a big no-no. Giving too much of information, as I told you before, that you just need to provide your highlights. No one is interested to know your entire work history. So if you can tell something in 2 lines, maybe, why would you give that same information in a huge paragraph? You cannot use narrative style in your resume. Cover letter is a different thing. There you can, obviously, that's more of storytelling thing, I would say. But in resume, you would not give much information. You can use bullet points if you want to make it more simplified, and it's also easy for readers' eye if you use bullet points. Listing references. Dawn, another quick question for you. So what do you think? Do you recommend people should use references? If not, why? Why do you think it's a big no for a resume?
Yes, we always use a separate reference list. I've heard 2 stories. I always bring them with me to an interview, but I've heard people say it's also kind of like you're assuming things. So we always say, for sure, just we leave them, we don't put them on the resume, we leave them as a separate piece of paper. And once they're requested, then we will send the references out.
Right, exactly. And also it's very important to give a heads up to the person. They should know that you are providing their information to employer or maybe any third party, because you are not even sure that whether your resume gonna go through. Then it's not a good idea. You are just putting someone else's information there. There are other things which do have priority, or criminal check, or maybe police clearance. So there are other things. I know we do have people joining from other countries as well today, but I am talking about Canadian style resume. Okay, so there could be a chance that in some cases they need you to send references in advance. You can do that if they ask, but if they are not asking, please do not send someone else information in advance. Using tables. This is very important, especially when you are applying in big companies. Using tables, I know it's very easy. It becomes easy for for person who is making, and even for a reader to read that information. But just imagine that your resume is going in a system which doesn't recognize tables. So if someone is applying for, let's take an example of any bank, they do have their applicant tracking system and they don't track tables. So that way, anything which is in the table wouldn't be reviewed by the system, okay? And you really don't want to do that. So that's another reason that why we shouldn't be using any tables or any graphs in the resume. Now let's talk about some do's. Be consistent, very simple. We just need to make a resume simple, sweet, and as I told you, easy on eyes. Use the same format. It should have the same flow every time. It shouldn't be, something big and then something tiny. It has to be in a same fashion throughout. If you are using, white space, make sure you are using it throughout. If you are using bullet points, make sure you are using bullet points only. You can even underline, skills. You can bold your statements, something which you want to emphasize, which you want to highlight, and you want readers' attention. Make sure you highlight those things. In some cases, I know that's not recommended to do that. But when we talk about Canadian style resume, because since it's a one-page document, so we recommend actually if you have any achievement or any award or something awesome you have done in your past, you should highlight that. Again, it shouldn't be, every time you're underlining all the things, once in a while, so that it looks catchy too. One size doesn't fit all. Consider your resume is a living document. We look for a change, and we are flexible as well at the same point. So every time you apply for any position, make sure you are making those necessary changes. Also, when you come from one country to another, or you go from one organization to another, we always take some value along. So also consider that when I am talking about my career, my resume, I need to update that every time. I cannot carry that obsolete document every time. So even if you know that you do have one master copy, you can prepare one master copy, but make sure you keep on, making those important changes every time for the position that you want to apply. Consider screening your resume by comparing it with job description of the position. So you can actually use skills that employer is looking for a particular profile. I'm not saying that you should do cheating, that's a bad thing. But what I'm saying that if you have those skills already and you know that, you do have this ability and you have those skills. So instead of listing something which is not required, it's better to identify skills from the job description. Recommended font size, I would say, is 10.5 to 11. This way, you would also have some room on your resume to talk about information. Only reason for this is that it gives you extra room. If you start with 12 and 14, which I know in some cases it's preferred, it's very good for your eyes. It's very easy on eyes, but it will take up a lot of room from your resume. And also once you are done with the resume, you can ask for a help whether this looks okay. And we have been making tons of resume and it looks very professional with these font sizes. Avoid any text boxes or tables. As I told you, ATS wouldn't recognize. And again, you can see that guidelines might change from country to country. Few companies and even in few countries, there are very stringent guidelines for resume. You cannot actually play much with your resume. But when you talk about Canadian style resume, you can use multiple templates. That's not a case, but make sure anything that you are using should go with your profile. Tech person using a very fancy, resume doesn't make sense. Someone who is in film industry using a similar template makes sense. Maybe they want to use a colorful background, which is okay. So that's one thing that you need to make sure when you prepare your resume. Use your strength and accomplishments. Again, If you have done something great in your life, whether it was your internship, whether it was any achievement, even if it was 100% attendance, you should mention that. Try to quantify your achievements instead of qualitative information, because that's going to be a thing which would become more catchy for reader to read instead of just telling a story, because that you would do when you will get a chance for an interview. On your resume, you need to quantify if it's possible. If you think that, I have never got a chance to do something which I can actually put in numbers, that's a different thing. But if you have done something, make sure you put percentage or you put numbers in there. And make sure you have proper segregation. So when we talk about our strength, I cannot just list 10 top skills required by Canadian employers. No, I need to make sure I am, weighing them all. I am putting maybe 4 hard skills, then I'm putting 4 soft skills, just to make sure that there is a correct balance. On the same hand, I'm not saying that you should just mention everything. If you don't have those hard skills, how would you write that? But if in case you do have, you are good with, virtual platforms, that's also a hard skill. You should talk about it. Computer literacy, right? So these are a few important things you need to mention. So this is how typical resume looks like. So this is a format that we use at our organization. This is not a fancy, but this is very, very professional. So there is a room for everything. Contact information, make sure you do not want to tell your entire mailing address, your postal code, your street and avenue, that's all, your phone number, and then your email ID. You can also provide your LinkedIn URL. That's optional. If in case you don't want to mention it, it's fine, but we suggest if you do mention that, that's another great way. Job target is your position title, designation for which you want to apply. Profile summary is your 30 seconds speech, I would say. What's something really important you want your potential employee to know about you? So you will tell this. Profile summary is more of what you do, whom you help, and how you help. So in simple words, you would tell employer that you do have skills which can actually solve their pain points in the company. Key skills, as I mentioned, hard skills and soft skills. Highlights of qualification. If you are someone who is newly graduated, you can leave this category if you don't have much things to talk about. But if you are a person who is, initiator, you have participated in so many events, number of things to talk about, please go and put, things under this category. Work experience, position title, name of the company, month, year. If it's a short duration, then you need to mention month. But if you know that you have been with previous companies for a couple years, then you can just put years there. Education and certification, make sure you list all the important credentials. There is no need to talk about your high school. If you have already completed your master's and graduation, then we are not mentioning that. But if you are someone who's still in a school, or you just completed your high school, you would want to talk about it. All righty, so I will pass on the virtual mic to Dawn. And Dawn, the floor is yours. You can talk about applicant tracking system, and I can monitor everything for you. I can pull up all the slides for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Shivani. Yes, so this is one of the greatest changes that has happened in the last 10 years. Because of applying online, employers use a computer software program called an applicant tracking system. And this is how they screen resumes at a high volume to get the best priority, get the best candidates. So how this works, in your resume, you would have a summary, or your target would be written highly driven tax manager with 5+ years of financial experience in managing tax returns and affairs, proven experience of success, employer satisfaction, and strong communication skills. Now the ATS will read, it will pick up the tax manager, 5+ years, tax returns, affairs, employer satisfaction, and strong communication. Now those are all matches. So now your resume is going to go to a higher priority. If you built a resume and you had none of these keywords in, you would just be at a lower priority. So you want to give yourself the best chance, because then it will check, it'll match each one of those skills. Like Shivani was mentioning, it doesn't check boxes, it doesn't check tables. Also, there's also analytical skills and Microsoft Office, some applications it won't recognize. So that's why we look for a very plain looking resume with lots of white space. So that gives the computer that chance to read. There's several types of resumes. There's chronological resume, the most common resume in which you list your work experience in reverse chronological order. It presents the employer with a clear assessment of your experience, and it shows the employer that you have relevant work experience. And that's the key when you're building a resume and you're reading a job description, everything you can match, that's how you reduce it into one page. So if you have a 2-page resume, what it is, you're just going to keep matching what your experience to that job description, and that helps you shorten it to 1 page. The chronological resume is appropriate for job seekers who have a stable and consistent employment history that reflects upward mobility, or they have a job objective which is in the same industry as the employment history. And it also highlights steady employment history in a chronological resume. Functional resume is when you've had large periods of time of no work. It could be in school, maternity leave, and this focuses on your skills and accomplishments rather than your employment history. And it really works for recent graduates with no work experience. So you're listing only skills, accomplishments, and education. It's not very popular with most employers because there's no work history, but they will also be able to see your experience through school or your past experience. So it's a good function, but the one we recommend is the next one. And this is a combination or a hybrid. So this is a type of resume, lists your skills and experiences before your employment history. It highlights your skills and accomplishments rather than the positions you have. So the combination is the example Shivani just showed you, where at the top is your contact information, then we highlight your key skills, then it's your accomplishments, and then education. So it's all in one little package. And this is really appropriate for someone seeking a career change, or you're moving from one industry to another, and there was minimal gaps. Yeah, so the most important, once you have your contact information, full name, address, professional email, one of the most important is activate your phone message. Now, Shivani, have you experienced this when you've called a participant and their phone is not activated? Their phone message?
Yes, so Don, majority of the time when I call people, their voicemail is not even initialized. And if their voicemail is working, sometimes voicemail isn't that formal. I wouldn't say that that's formal. Yeah, so most of the cases we are unable to reach out to them.
Yeah, and that's one of the first things I check when I'm building a resume. And when I call that number, if that message is not activated, it's immediately I'll get you to activate it, because that's the most important. That's how employers are going to first contact you. So yeah, we are definitely at the 30-minute window, and because there's so much information. And basically we just have some examples. You can just cycle through that, Shivani, and then if there's any questions, we can answer. So when you're going through a job description, we highlight doing checks and X's. So that's how you would match your skills. And it's a strategic. You circle what matches for you, cross out what doesn't match, and this is how you start moving those keywords over. And the employer really values customer service, so you should highlight that. So anything that's in the job description, you're highlighting. And then here's a few examples. Giovanni's just going to cycle through some examples of appropriate resumes that do work with the applicant tracking system. And thank you so much for listening.
Bonnie, Don, thank you. And you can leave it on the last page if you like, if that helps at all. The one previous, people can read.
Yeah. There's
Totally up to
so
you,
much,
Shivani.
so much to this, like that, you know, but hopefully that helped give you some really strong information there.
Yeah, no, very helpful. And I think one of you said it best. It's a resume is a work in progress, right? You draft it the first time, you get feedback, and you continuously, like, you realize every year you actually upgrade your resume. You see a new idea, you see what's working, you talk to other people, and you continue to upgrade. But you've got to start somewhere. And I think what you folks have just provided is extremely helpful. I'm going to take a quick question that has been asked before we conclude. And for either one of you, the question is, I often find when I apply for jobs, they have asked about certifications and awards. And while I have a couple from my home country, I don't think Canadian companies would know what they are and where they're from. Is it even worth including them?
So, Don, I believe you want to answer it.
Yes, in my opinion, yes. And it gets down to what's relevant. If you see something in that job description that matches that, and then those awards would actually, complement you getting hired, or they're basically, you're telling what the employer's asking, definitely include them. We really feel strongly because we've seen the Canadian market move, because we need, everyone's hiring right now. So foreign credentials with recent accreditation helps, but even some companies will call overseas to check your references. So we always say, if your education and experience matches, definitely include it and definitely apply for that job.
Thank you, Don. Very well said. And thank you to both you and Shivani. Everyone, this is Diversity, right from British Columbia, BC. You can absolutely see the contact information. And even better, they're at today's show, so you can speak to their colleagues. You can live chat with them. You can do a video connection with them right here at today's event. Once again, that's all the time we have for questions, but you can absolutely connect with everyone and their team, Don and Shivani's team, over at their virtual booth in the show. We are open till 4 p.m. On behalf of Canadian Immigrant, I'd like to thank Diversity Community Resources, and I'd like to thank our hiring partner, Dialectica. Once again, everyone, our next session is up at 6 p.m. At 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the fair is open until 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you back soon. In the meantime, please go ahead and visit all the booths that are available today at the Canadian Immigrant Virtual Fair.
Yes, thank you so much, Sanjay. And I'm still here for another couple minutes. I believe I'm still here for till 4 p.m. So if someone wants to talk, virtual, call, chat, anything works. So I am available. Yeah, just
Thank
letting
you so much.
everyone know.
Thank you, Shivani. So you can find Shivani at the virtual booth. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjay.